True valor isn't found in the sunlight. It glows in the flickering neon of the city's most dangerous and forgotten corners. We tell the stories of those who stood tall when the world told them to bow down. Hit subscribe now and find your own strength in the night. The night Kevin Ashford drove away in his father's Mercedes, he was laughing. Not a nervous laugh. Not the kind of laugh that comes from relief or from too much to drink. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of laugh that tells you a person has done something they're proud of. He didn't speed away. He coasted, windows down, music up, like he was leaving a party that had gone exactly the way he planned. He didn't know who my father was. That was the last mistake he ever made. I need to go back a little, because nothing about what happened makes sense unless you understand who we were before it. We weren't a military family in the way most people picture. There was no base housing, no bumper stickers on the minivan, no dad in dress blues at the kitchen table. My father had been undercover for the better part of a decade, embedded in a classified federal task force that I still don't have full clearance to understand. He went by a cover identity. He wore civilian clothes. He drove a used Ford pickup and paid his own electric bill. To everyone in Millhaven, Oregon, he was just a guy named Ray who worked for a government logistics contractor and traveled too much. My mother never told me the truth. She was protecting us, she said later. Protecting the mission. She worked double shifts as a nurse's aide at the county hospital, raised me and my younger sister on her own, and every month a deposit hit the account from a contracting firm none of us could find on Google. She clipped coupons. She drove a car with a cracked dashboard. She told us Dad loved us from wherever he was. I believed her. I had no reason not to. My sister Allie was 22 when it happened. She had just started her second year at Millhaven Community College on an academic scholarship, the first person in our family to get there. She was studying environmental science. She wanted to work for the Forest Service. She was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday and kept plants on every windowsill and never raised her voice, not once in her life. The Ashfords were old money in Millhaven. Kevin's father, Derek Ashford, owned the largest private timber operation in the county and had been on the county commission for 11 years running. Kevin was 24, technically a student at the same college, though based on his attendance record, he seemed to treat it more like a social membership. He drove a different car every month. He wore a watch that cost more than our car. He thought that being the son of Derek Ashford in Millhaven, Oregon meant you operated under a different set of rules than everyone else. He was right for a long time. The night it happened, Allie had gone to a study group at a house near campus. I wasn't there. I was 2 states away, working a seasonal job in Idaho, trying to save money to transfer to a 4-year university. She texted me around 9 saying she was heading home. Then nothing. My mother called me at 2 in the morning. Her voice didn't sound like her voice. It was flat, like someone had pressed all the air out of it. Something happened to your sister. I didn't ask questions. I got in my car and drove 6 hours straight, arrived at our house before sunrise. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her scrubs, both hands wrapped around a mug she hadn't drunk from. Allie was in her room with the door closed. Mom looked at me when I walked in and didn't say anything for a long moment. She said it was Kevin Ashford, Mom finally said. Him and 2 of his friends. I sat down. I didn't trust my legs. She went to the hospital, I asked. I took her myself, Mom said. Before she called you, before she called anyone. We went to St. Joseph's, not the county hospital, not where I work. I didn't want anyone to know yet. She slid a folded document across the table. They did the kit. It's documented. My mother had done this on instinct. 14 years of watching the system fail people in that county had taught her one thing: get the evidence before anyone can make it disappear. She had cried in the car, she told me later, but she held it together long enough to make the right calls. We went to the sheriff's department the next morning, all 3 of us. Allie wore a gray sweatshirt with the hood up. She held my hand the entire way inside. The deputy who took our statement was named Greer. He was maybe 40, former defensive lineman Bill, moved through the room like a man who had never once questioned his own authority. He listened to Allie's account with a clipboard on his knee and a pen he tapped against his palm every 30 seconds. When she finished, he clicked the pen closed. "Miss," he said, his voice patient in the way that means condescending. "I'm not saying nothing happened, but Kevin Ashford is a known figure in this community. His family has been here for 4 generations. You're making a very serious allegation." He looked at me, then back at my mother. "Do you have any witnesses? Anything other than your word?" "We have a rape kit," Mom said. "That only confirms contact," Greer said, "not context." My mother stood up before I could say anything. "We'll be in touch," she said. Ice cold, we walked out. In the parking lot, Allie started shaking. I put my arm around her and felt her whole body trembling like something inside her had come loose. Mom stood between us and the sheriff's building like she was daring it to follow us. "He called Derek Ashford last night," Mom said quietly, watching the building. "I know it. I've seen how this county works for 20 years. By tomorrow, there won't be a deputy in there who doesn't know this came from us." She was right. By noon, Allie's Instagram had been flooded. Someone had posted a screenshot of an old photo from a party, and the caption called her a liar who was chasing a payout. Kevin's friends had a story already assembled, clean and rehearsed. Allie had been drinking, had come on to Kevin, had followed him into a back room. The comments were brutal. People who had waved at us at the grocery store, people my mother had cared for at the hospital, people who knew Allie's name since she was in middle school, they piled on. The narrative spread faster than I could read it. Mom took Allie's phone and put it in a drawer. "Don't look at it," she said. "Every one of those lies is a hole they're digging for themselves." Then she went to the cabinet above the refrigerator. I had been in this kitchen 1,000 times. I thought I knew every inch of it. But I had never seen her reach past the back of that cabinet before. She came out with a phone I didn't recognize. Old, thick, the kind of thing that looked like it had been built to survive a blast radius. She turned it on with the ease of someone who had done it before. "Mom," I said. "What is that?" She was already dialing. "Sit down," she said, not unkindly. "This is going to take a minute to explain." She spoke into the phone in a tone I had never once heard her use in my entire life. Not panicked, not pleading. Direct and precise, like a report. She gave a code. She asked for a specific line. She waited, calm as stone. Then she said, "It's Beth. Tell him it's about Allie. Tell him the situation is active, and I need him now." She ended the call, set the phone on the table, looked at me. "Your father," she said, "is not a logistics contractor." The silence in that kitchen was the loudest thing I've ever heard. "He's been embedded with the Joint Task Force," she continued. "Naval Criminal Investigative Service, partnered with the Defense Intelligence Agency. His actual rank is commander. He has been working undercover for 9 years. She folded her hands. "He is also the most dangerous man I have ever known, and he is about to find out that someone hurt his daughter." I opened my mouth, closed it. "Why didn't you tell us?" I asked. "Because the people who do what he does can't have visible family," she said. "It's how it works. The moment someone knows your pressure point, you become a liability." She looked toward Allie's door. "I was the pressure point. You were." She was. "He kept us invisible to keep us safe." Her voice cracked, just once, then steadied. "He's not going to be invisible anymore." 4,000 miles away, in a non-disclosed location on a naval installation that doesn't appear in open-source records, my father put down a secure satellite phone. He had been mid-operation, 18 months of groundwork, a network of arms brokers operating through front companies registered in 3 different countries. His team was 48 hours from the extraction phase. He walked to the operations board on the wall of the command room and looked at it for exactly 4 seconds. Then he took it down. His second-in-command, a warrant officer named Walsh, stood up from his workstation. "Sir, stand down the operation," my father said. "Hold all assets. I'm calling a recess." Walsh stared at him. "Commander, We are 2 days out. We cannot. I'm not asking, my father said. Commander, we are 2 days out. We cannot. I'm not asking, my father said. His voice didn't rise. It never rose. That was the thing about him. I came to understand later. The quieter he got, the more certain you could be that something catastrophic was about to happen. My daughter was assaulted. I'm going home. Walsh was quiet for a moment. The agency will pull your clearance if you go dark on an active op. Then they'll pull it, my father said, picking up his go bag. I've been doing this for 22 years. They can have the stars back. I'm going home. He was in the air within the hour. He didn't call us from the plane. He called someone else. 2 people, actually. Names I still don't know, and by the time his wheels touched down at Portland International, 3 things had already happened that I didn't learn about until later. He came to the house alone. No convoy. No tactical vehicles. He walked up the driveway in civilian clothes. A dark jacket, boots, a duffel bag over one shoulder. And he looked like the man I had always known. Tired, a little older. Traveling too much. He knocked on his own front door. Mom opened it. They looked at each other for a long moment. He came inside. He set the bag down. He walked to Allie's door and knocked softly. "Allie girl," he said. "It's Dad. Can I come in?" The door opened. I stood in the hallway and listened to him go in. I heard the sound of my sister starting to cry. Then silence. Then his low voice, too quiet to make out words. Steady and unhurried. The kind of voice that doesn't try to fix anything, just sits with it. He was in there for almost an hour. When he came out, he closed the door gently behind him. He sat down at the kitchen table with me and my mother. He looked older up close, gray at the temples, lines I didn't remember. He folded his hands and looked at the table. "Tell me everything," he said, "from the beginning." So we did. Mom first, then me. He didn't interrupt. He didn't react visibly. He took in everything and filed it somewhere behind his eyes where I couldn't see it. When we finished, he was quiet for a moment. "The deputy who took the report," he said. "Greer." "Yes," Mom said. "He called Ashford before end of shift," my father said. "It wasn't a question. We assumed," I said. "It's confirmed," he said simply. "I made some calls on the plane." He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket and set it on the table. It was a phone record. Greer's cell. Derek Ashford's office line. 9:47 p.m., the night of the report. 7 minutes. Mom looked at it and nodded slowly. "Kevin Ashford," my father said. 24. Prior incident at Oregon State 4 years ago. No charges filed. Victim transferred schools. He looked at me. "This is not the first time." Something cold moved through the room. "How do you know that?" I asked. "Because I looked," he said. And that was all. He asked to see the hospital documentation. He read it carefully, front to back, then folded it and returned it to Mom. He picked up his phone and stepped outside for 20 minutes. When he came back in, he sat down and looked at both of us. "Here's what we are not going to do," he said. "We are not going to post on social media. We are not going to respond to any of the accusations online. We are not going to speak to any local press. And we are not going to speak to any local press. And we are not going to file anything more with the county sheriff's department." He paused. "The county sheriff's department is no longer involved in this." "Then who is?" I asked. "People who owe me a significant number of favors," he said. A small pause. "And the FBI's Violent Crimes Unit in Portland, who received an anonymous tip 40 minutes ago along with a digital package that took my analyst about 20 minutes to compile." Mom covered her mouth with her hand. "What kind of package?" I asked. "The kind that opens an investigation," he said. "Bank records. Property transfers. A county commission vote from 3 years ago that approved a timber rights expansion on protected watershed land. And a sealed complaint from Oregon State University that was buried by their legal department in 2019. The room was very quiet. "They weren't just protecting Kevin," my father said. "Derek Ashford has been running his operation through county commission access for over a decade. Illegal clear-cutting on federal land. Proceeds laundered through a series of timber brokerage firms. Kevin knows about it because Kevin has been present at the meetings. He has been to every single one since he turned 18. I stared at him. Allie walked in on something. She saw a map, my father said, at the house where the study group was held. She told the hospital intake nurse she had accidentally gone into the wrong room. She saw men around a table with property surveys. He looked at the phone record. That's why it wasn't just one person. That's why the story was built so fast. They didn't attack her because they could. They attacked her because she was a liability. Mom stood up and went to the window. She stood there for a long time with her back to us. "What do we do now?" I asked. My father looked at me with a steadiness I have never felt from another human being in my life. "We take them apart," he said. "Carefully, legally, completely." He started that night. His first call was to a forensic accountant in Seattle who apparently owed him from something that happened in 2016 that my father declined to explain. By midnight, Derek Ashford's financial infrastructure was being mapped. 3 LLCs, 2 timber brokerage firms, a commercial real estate holding company, and a nonprofit land trust that had been used to receive and reroute federal conservation grants. His second call was to a former NCIS colleague who was now working as a federal liaison with the Environmental Protection Agency. The illegal clear-cutting on watershed land was a federal matter, which meant federal jurisdiction, which meant the county sheriff's office had exactly zero say in what happened next. By 2 in the morning, I watched my father sit at our kitchen table with a legal pad and a pen, and work through it like a man dismantling an engine. Methodical. Patient. He didn't look angry. He looked concentrated. "Go to sleep," he told me. "I'm not tired," I said. He looked up. "I know. But you're not going to be useful tomorrow if you haven't slept, and tomorrow I need you useful." He held my gaze. "I have this. Your job right now is to be here for your sister when she wakes up." I went to bed. I don't think I slept. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was a news alert from the Oregonian. A federal investigation had been opened into Ashford Timber Holdings, LLC, in connection with unauthorized logging activity on protected federal watershed land in 2 counties. The announcement was attributed to a joint statement from the EPA and the FBI's Portland field office. My father was already dressed, sitting at the kitchen table with coffee. "They know," I said. "They've known for about 4 hours," he said. Derek Ashford's attorney called him at 6 a.m. "I know because we were monitoring the line." He said it casually, the way you would mention checking the weather. "Is that legal?" He gave me a look that was almost amused. "Under certain circumstances." Allie came out of her room around 9. She looked like she hadn't slept either, pale and careful in her movements, like she was testing whether the floor was solid. Dad stood up when she came in. He didn't try to hug her again. He just asked if she wanted eggs. She said yes. He made eggs. The 3 of us sat at the kitchen table and didn't talk about any of it for 40 minutes. He asked her about her environmental science coursework. She talked about a paper she had been writing on watershed restoration. He listened like it was the most important thing he'd heard in weeks. I think it was, actually. That afternoon, Kevin Ashford's attorney filed a preemptive motion in county court, attempting to get ahead of any civil complaint by framing the encounter as consensual. My father read the filing on his phone, folded it away, and made a call. The filing was countered within 6 hours by a federal attorney representing the interests of the investigation, who noted that the county civil court had no jurisdiction over matters that intersected an active federal criminal inquiry. The county judge, a man who had been appointed to his seat in 2018, partly on the strength of a campaign contribution from a Derek Ashford-associated PAC, recused himself before noon. Kevin's attorney released a statement to local media calling the federal investigation politically motivated. My father's response was to have his analyst release the Oregon State complaint to 3 separate journalists simultaneously. The story broke nationally by 6 p.m. The woman from Oregon State was named Claire. She had never spoken publicly. She had transferred schools, changed her major, moved to another state, rebuilt. When a journalist reached her through channels I still don't fully understand, she agreed to speak on the record. She said Kevin had done the same thing to her. Different house, different story. Same outcome, powerful family, buried complaint, moved on. The comments on our local news station's Facebook page changed overnight. The same people who had been calling Allie a liar went quiet. A few of them deleted their posts. One woman, a former teacher of Allie's, posted an apology directly on Allie's Instagram. Mom showed it to Allie. She read it and set the phone down without saying anything. "Does it help?" Mom asked her. Allie thought about it. "A little," she said. "Not as much as I thought it would." That was the night my father drove out to the Ashford property alone. I found out about it afterward. He didn't announce it. He just got in his truck around 10 p.m. and came back 2 hours later. He told me about it the next morning, calmly, over coffee. Derek Ashford had answered the door himself. The security team he'd hired after the federal announcement had gone home for the night, which my father had anticipated. He said Ashford had looked at him for a long time, trying to place him. "I told him who I was," my father said. "I told him I was Beth's husband. I told him I was Allie's father." He sipped his coffee. He tried to close the door. "What did you do?" I asked. "I put my foot in it," my father said simply. "And I told him that the package the FBI received didn't include everything, that there were 2 additional documents, a signed statement from a county commissioner who was prepared to testify about the watershed votes in exchange for a reduced federal charge, and a record of a wire transfer from Ashford Holdings to a shell company that had, 6 years earlier, also made payments to the county clerk who had buried Claire's complaint." He set his cup down. I told him that those documents would be delivered to the U.S. Attorney's Office at 8 a.m., and that the only variable left in his life right now was whether his son chose to cooperate before or after the indictment. "What did he say?" I asked. My father looked at me. He asked what cooperation would look like. Kevin Ashford turned himself in to the FBI's Portland office the following morning. His attorney negotiated a proffer agreement. Kevin gave a full statement. He confirmed that the attack on my sister had been planned, not spontaneous, that Derek had been aware she'd seen the survey maps, and that the intent was to ensure she was too frightened and too discredited to report what she'd seen. In exchange for his cooperation on the federal timber fraud case, Kevin received a reduced charge on the criminal assault count. He still went to prison. 4 years, federal facility. His 2 friends, who had not cooperated and had no leverage to offer, received 7 years each. Derek Ashford was indicted on 11 federal counts, including wire fraud, conspiracy, illegal harvesting of federal timber, and obstruction of justice. His assets were frozen within 48 hours of the indictment. The timber operation, worth an estimated $40 million at its peak, was seized pending forfeiture proceedings. The county commission seat he had held for 11 years was vacated. Deputy Greer resigned before he could be fired. He was later the subject of a separate state investigation into improper conduct. He lost his pension. The county judge who had taken the campaign money never sat on a case again. My father attended every day of the preliminary hearings, in a suit, in the back row, saying nothing. He was not there to be seen. He was there so that everyone who needed to understand what accountability looked like had a reference point when they turned around. I was there too most days. Allie came to the sentencing. She didn't testify at the criminal trial. She had given her statement to federal investigators, and the prosecution built their case without requiring her to take the stand. My father had made sure of that. He had made it a condition of his cooperation with the federal inquiry. His daughter would not be cross-examined by defense attorneys who had already proven they were willing to lie in open court. The day Kevin was sentenced, Allie wore a green sweater. She sat between me and my mother in the 3rd row. She didn't look at him when they brought him in. She looked straight ahead at the federal seal on the wall behind the bench. When the judge read the sentence, Kevin turned around. I don't know why. Some instinct, maybe. One last look at the people he thought he had broken. He found my sister's face. She was already looking at him. She didn't flinch. She didn't look away. He looked away first. Walking out of the courthouse, my father put his arm around Allie's shoulders. She leaned into him, briefly, then stood back up straight. "Is it enough?" I asked her quietly. I wanted to know how she actually felt, not the answer people give in interviews. She was quiet for a moment. No, she said. Not really. But it's real. She thought about it. It's the realest thing that's happened since that night. Everything else felt like it was happening to someone else. This felt like it was actually happening to me. My father nodded at that slowly. He understood something in what she said that I'm still working to fully understand. There was one more thing. 3 weeks after the sentencing, my father came home from a meeting in Portland with a folder. He set it on the kitchen table. Inside was a letter from the Federal Asset Forfeiture Office, a check made out to my sister from the Victim Restitution Fund, and a document my father had drafted himself and submitted to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The document was a proposal. The Ashford timber operations logging roads, which cut through federal land, were to be decommissioned and removed as part of the environmental remediation required by the EPA settlement. The contract for the remediation work, worth approximately $3 million, had been awarded to a restoration nonprofit. My father had arranged for my sister to be hired as a field consultant on the remediation project. It's your watershed, he said, sliding the folder toward her. The one you've been studying. You're going to help fix it. Allie stared at the document for a long time. Then she looked up at him. You did this because of my papers, she said. I did it because you're good at this, he said. And because the land deserves someone who actually cares about it. And because, he paused. I wasn't here for a long time, and I can't get that time back. But I can make sure what comes next is right. He resigned his commission 2 months later. Official retirement, 22 years of service, full benefits. He did not announce it publicly. He came home one Tuesday afternoon with a box of office things and put it in the garage. That was it. He's been here since. He fixes things around the house. He drives Allie to her field site sometimes, sits in the truck with coffee while she works. He comes to dinner every night. He argues about football with me. He's still the most dangerous person I know. He just isn't pointed at anything anymore. Last fall, Allie gave a talk at a local high school. A teacher had invited her to speak about the remediation project, the watershed work. She didn't mention any of what happened. She just talked about the land, the logging damage, the recovery process. She showed photographs of the regrowth. Afterward, a girl came up to her in the hallway. Maybe 16. She stood there for a moment without saying anything. Did you ever feel like no one was going to listen to you? The girl finally asked. Allie looked at her for a moment. Yeah, she said. I did. What did you do? Allie thought about that. I had people around me who refused to let that be the end of the story, she said. That helped, but also I stayed. I kept going to the next thing. I didn't let them make that night the last thing. She held the girl's gaze. You can't let them make it the last thing. I was standing down the hall. I watched the girl nod slowly. I watched my sister nod back. On the drive home, I told Allie what I had seen. She didn't say anything for a mile. Then she said, Do you think she's okay? I don't know, I said. I should have gotten her contact information, she said, looking out the window. In case someone needs to know the right next steps. She started writing a guide that week, a simple, clear document about what to do in the first 24 hours, who to call, which hospitals in Oregon have specialized, sane nurses, what rights you have when law enforcement is unresponsive. She put her contact information at the bottom. She's distributed it to 43 schools now. My father helped her print the first batch. He didn't say anything while he did it. Just ran the printer, stacked the pages, handed them to her. Some battles don't end at the courthouse. They just change what they look like. Before you go, I want to ask you something directly, because I read every comment and I want to hear from you. If your family had been in this situation, but your father didn't have the resources mine had, what would you have done? Where would you have turned first? Drop your answer below, because I think those answers might actually help somebody reading this right now. Comment your city or state so I know where our community is watching from. If this story meant something to you, hit like and subscribe. We have another story coming next week about a mother who spent 12 years being told she was wrong. And then one document changed everything. You don't want to miss it. Stay strong. We'll see you then. I've thought a lot about what made Kevin Ashford believe he could do what he did and walk away clean. And I don't think it was just the money, or the name on the building, or the fact that his father had been running that county for 11 years. I think it was something quieter than all of that. I think it was the accumulated experience of never once being held accountable for anything small. When nothing small catches up with you, you start to believe nothing big will either. And that belief, once it takes root, turns a person into something genuinely dangerous. That's the thing nobody talks about when they talk about power and corruption. It doesn't start with a $40 million timber fraud. It starts with a deputy who doesn't write the report. It starts with a university that buries a complaint because the legal exposure is inconvenient. It starts with a room full of people who all know something is wrong and decide, each individually, that it's not their problem to be the one who says so. Kevin didn't become who he was in a vacuum. He was built by every moment the adults around him chose their comfort over their conscience. My father understood that. That's why he didn't just go after Kevin. He went after the whole structure that had made Kevin possible. He froze the money. He surfaced Claire's complaint. He found the county commissioner who had been waiting for a reason to talk. He understood that justice, real justice, isn't a single verdict. It's the dismantling of the conditions that allowed the wrong to happen in the first place. My sister taught me something different, and I think it's the harder lesson. She taught me that surviving something is not the same as recovering from it, and recovering is not the same as rebuilding. When she started writing that guide for other survivors, she wasn't doing it because she had fully healed. She was doing it because she had decided that the experience, as terrible as it was not going to be the thing that defined the boundary of what she could do in the world. She turned the worst thing that happened to her into information that other people could use. That takes a particular kind of resolve that I don't have a clean word for. It's not optimism. It's not toughness in the way people usually mean it. It's more like a refusal. A refusal to let cruelty be the last word. And my father, for all his clearances and training and 22 years of navigating things most people don't know exist, the thing that moved me most was not the frozen assets or the federal indictments. It was him sitting at our kitchen table making eggs. It was driving Allie to her field sites and waiting in the truck. It was coming home with a box of office things on a Tuesday and not making a speech about it. He had spent his career being invisible to protect us. When it mattered most, he made himself visible. That's not a military decision. That's a human one. I think about the girl in the school hallway, the one who asked Allie what she had done when no one would listen. I think about what it meant to her to hear that someone else had felt that same erasure, and it stayed anyway, had kept going to the next thing. That exchange cost nothing. It required no resources, no clearance, no connections. It just required Allie to be honest about what she had been through. There's something in that I'm still learning, the idea that what we survive, when we're willing to carry it honestly instead of burying it, can become something that steadies another person. Not because the pain was worth it. It wasn't. But because we're still here, and being here, showing up, telling the truth about what it actually cost. That turns out to matter more than I knew how to understand before all of this happened.